All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining me today. My name is Miriam Smith Stevens, and I happen to be the sister of one of our contributors today and story shares today, Hope Wright, and sister in law to her husband, Willie Wright. And they are historians and interpreters and actors at Colonial Williamsburg Foundation. Today, we're going to bring to you an important topic about the significance of Juneteenth and the music in the freedom movement of Juneteenth. So, without further ado, I'll allow the Wrights to introduce themselves. And then the question for today is, how does music relate to the movement of Juneteenth and the freedom movement? Take it away.
Hi, my name is Hope Wright, and I've been an employee at the Colonial Williamsburg Foundation for 39 years all total, 25 years full time.
And my name is Willie Wright. I've been an actor, interpreter, script writer at Colonial Williamsburg for about 20 years. Somewhere in between there, I was an actor at Mount Vernon, which is the home of George Washington.
I think it's very important before we talk about music and before we talk about Juneteenth, but just to look at what was coming to an end on Juneteenth. Since this country's inception, enslavement has been a part of that. And what that actually means is the largest forced migration of African people through the Middle Passage, just the terrible journey to get here of African people, where a lot of lives were lost just in the transport here. And then once those Africans arrived here, they were put into a system that was perpetual, meaning there was no end to it. The status of enslavement was passed through the mother. So if your mother was enslaved, you were enslaved. You were marked before you even came into this world. And if you're an enslaved woman, you're birthing your own replacement. It was hereditary, it was race-based, in which only people of African descent would be held as enslaved people, and the enslaved people themselves were classified as property, and it would fluctuate between chattel and real estate. So you have to have all of that in mind before you can get to that coming to an end. We're talking about a system that survived for almost 300 years, and that was the law within the United States. So when you think about living through that and that coming to an end, but just the living through that, music becomes a release for people. And you cannot look at Black music during or since without knowing, that in all that creativity and talent, it's born out of some horrific circumstances, and where that would have been sometimes the only release that you had if you are a mother separated, from your child, if you are a child separated from your parents, siblings apart, that has certain meaning. A lot of times people want, the music without the struggle, but you're not giving, the full reverence, and respect to the music if you try to separate it from why and how it was created.
That makes sense. And with 1 minute left,
And if I could say a word before you chop me off, please. You know what
sure,
I'm saying?
brother.
I took the breath, here you come. But there's they say that great art is made through struggle. And I can't tell you a struggle that's worse than being enslaved for generation after generation, right? So that pain that you hear in their voices is real. From grown people singing that have less rights than a 2-year-old white child that is singing.
Yeah.
And then, speaking of Black music coming from that struggle and from the theft of their labor, and that also stretches to the theft of their music. The blues created out of struggle. That's Black people. Rock and roll created by Black people. And then to be taken and somebody to try it on like a mask and take credit for it. You know what I'm saying? And now we have Juneteenth. We were the only people, African people that were enslaved legally. No Irish people were ever legally enslaved in this country. So let's not even have that conversation. But when we do get a holiday like this, it's not strictly for us, just like the enslavement was strictly for us. So the struggle continues. So, we're not going to sit and pat ourselves on the back. Juneteenth being acknowledged is beautiful, but we're the most incarcerated, saying that end of slavery, the 13th Amendment says neither slavery nor involuntary servitude shall exist except as punishment for a crime. So then let's examine, what are we calling crime? Because when emancipation came, they were locking us up for vagrancy, even though we had no place to go and no money.
Right.
You know what I mean? So
Yes.
the only thing that this country has ever done just for Black people was enslave us, because after civil rights, then here come immigrants. The civil rights bill was passed in 1964, 65, the borders and everything opened up. So yeah, we still got a ways to go, but happy Juneteenth.
Well, I really want to thank you all for sharing, because I know personally, and all of us are singers or musicians, music plays a deep rooted expression for us all, and it helps us get through. And as you mentioned, both of you mentioned, it's real, it's raw, the struggle is continued, and the movement is ongoing. Yes, we did get the Emancipation Proclamation, and then you had Juneteenth 2 years later afterwards. Yet the movement to freedom, I think, using music as part of the tool to express what's going on with how we feel in these situations is very important. I want to thank you both for just taking the time today to share with me, sharing the message and the history and the understanding of Juneteenth and how important it is for all of us as Americans to realize that we're still in that fight for freedom. We're still in that fight for civility, for human
Absolutely.
rights, for dignity, for
Social
just making
justice, equity.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes. And that music can play a part and is a part and a tool and resource that was used for people who were enslaved to really fight for something they could control: the dignity of singing, the dignity of playing an instrument, the dignity of using their own expression to get through in that horrific time. So again, thank you so much for your time today, for sharing the rights. Any parting words?
Uh, Thank you for having us. And if there's any need for clarification for anything said, I'm more than happy to clarify.
Yeah, thank you for having us. And I would leave you with a book that talks about that time immediately after emancipation, where enslaved families were trying to reconnect with each other. It's called Help Me to Find My People by Dr. Heather Andrea Williams. And I think that'll give all of you some insight into what was taken away during enslavement, but how enslaved people still held on, and what they did to try to find family afterwards, and how that continued even into the early 20th century.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for listening to our segment and our chapter, Story 3, Music and the Movement and Freedom for Juneteenth and Beyond. Well, I want to thank Willie and Hope Wright for their time today and sharing about Juneteenth and um, just the significance of the music in the freedom movement. And we will have this a part of the total recording for our Juneteenth Celebrate Juneteenth Lunch and Learn. Thank you all again. My name is Miriam Smith Stevens, and we really thank you for taking time to learn more. Have a great rest of your day. This story sharing part is over right now, but we're going to continue on with story chapter 4 about the momentum and keeping the momentum going for Juneteenth and beyond.